easy chair, find one, and anyone who feels comfortable sitting on the floor, come close, be intimate. This space is wild and weird. We really appreciate it when you come close and hang out with the readers. If standing room's better, please stand. That's great too. So this is common area maintenance. It's a studio, gallery, collective space. We have 14 or 15 artists that work here all the time helping put on shows like this. This particular show is radical because all of the readers, about 70 readers over the course of our AWP show, have put their books in the library, they've put their art on the walls, they've also collaborated on this amazing book that we've made, which will be available for you in the back there. So if you take a look around, know that every single thing in here is from a fellow author, a fellow artist, and all part of AWP. So congratulations to all of you and all of them. And in case you missed it, the bathroom's in the back, so during the reading, please run back there, and there's drinks over there. Make the space like your own, make it your home. Also want to be very clear that we're on unceded Duwamish land right now, and I think it's a privilege to be here, and always recognize that this is a moment to consider where we are and our history and what we can do in the future. So I'm going to introduce Snail Trail Press and all you amazing readers. Woogie, I'd love this for you to take over.
Jumpsuit had pockets, but it doesn't. Thank you. Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Timothy, Robert, and Whitney. Can we have one more round of applause for Cam? I always want to start off by saying I get really nervous as a reader, but it is like doubly anxiety-inducing to be a host of an event. But hi everyone, my name is Woogie Bay, and I'm an editor with Snail Trail, a journal of eco-poetics. It's a true delight to be here tonight as your host and to welcome 13 Snail Trail contributors to the stage to share their writing. Woo! Really quickly, the format of tonight's event will be 3 blocks of readings with 10 minutes intermissions in between. I want to say at any point during the night, if you need to go to the bathroom, stand up and stretch your legs, get more beverages, head off to the next offsite because there are a lot of things happening at the same time that sound amazing. Please do. We want you to take care of yourself in whatever way makes sense to you. I have some words of thanks to share to some people who've helped bring this event to life. I know I just thanked them, but I really do want to thank Timothy Firth, Whitney, Robert, and everyone, Danny at the bar, everyone at CAM, for opening up your space to writers and artists. CAM is a place I hold dear to my heart. I have my birthday reading here in June. Like, it really is a special place. And it's a gift to be able to host our offsite here. I want to thank my co-editors, Aya Bram, who does our wonderful book design. And Caitlin Oaklegard, who's not here, but will be here tomorrow. Thank you to our readers and contributors for sharing your writing with all of Seattle. All of Seattle is here tonight. I can't wait to spend the next 2 hours with your words. And thank you, all of you, for being here and spending part of your Thursday night with us. As I said, I know a lot is happening, so it's really meaningful that you're here with us right now. You're in for a treat, and I hope you leave the event feeling nourished and inspired. I thought I was going to read bios at the beginning of each block, but I'll just introduce everyone as they read. It's my pleasure to introduce our first reader, Amaranth, Borsuk, and Terri Witek. Really quick bio. Amaranth Borsuk is the author of a book published through MIT Press, a concise introduction to the book as object, content, idea, and interface. She is director of the MFA in Creative Writing and Poetics at the UW Bothell, where I went, by the way. And Terri Witek's 8 books of poetry include her newest collection, Something's Missing in This Museum, which comes out this year. She teaches poetry in the expanded field in Stetson University's low-res MFA, and leads the Fernando Pessoa game at the Disquiet International Literary Program each summer in Lisbon. Their work is represented by the Liminal in Valencia, Spain. Please welcome Amaranth and Terri.
Thank you so much. We both just want to say that this is a collaboration that was many years in the making, and Snail Trail was the first place to publish any of it, and it's a huge honor for us to read with you all.
Dear citizen of no rain,
Dear denizen of Skyshot,
I woke pre-alarm with an earwig. Show me Shuba. What was the second line supposed to be?
I picture you living in an echo or a boat at the bottom of a fountain.
Was it a description? Constant is the rain? Was it a translated instruction? Rain without stopping?
Where did that image come from, my wishful addendum?
That's the kind of thing that divides people up in my world, where it rains so much, into sentimentalists or labor leaders.
I've so much to tell you and so many questions.
Now I wonder, was it you who pushed this tiny little puzzler prayer out so it crossed the long air between us and dropped into my ear, which itches?
Our sky is bright and strafed with cirrostratus.
6 a.m. does tend to crank out the tunes. Do you get those too?
Are your clouds healthy, whole?
You might think rain, rain, go away brings just god-awful luck and keep it locked up.
I'm doing my citizen research, my repetend contributing to inflation.
Row, row, row your boat. Lengthens our hand-washing principles. Uses up rain.
What do you need to know about our situation?
What's blazed from your pipes, I wonder?
It rains most in the mountains, maybe 100 days of the year, though here, where I live, the sky tries and tries.
Too personal.
But produces mostly empty signals of fine mist.
Too near some grotty o-hole?
Our annual allotment of rain would fill a fist.
Not close enough to those gray, mothy clouds that hang another hard day between blue?
Any precip from the Hyades is channeled to farms in the foothills, and those of us further downwind will never see those agricultural palaces.
Too late for old flow.
Our rations arrive each week in unlabeled cans, and we forage what we can't.
Even though we've never tugged on each other's rain boots.
I haven't heard the cymbal crash of a thunderclap except on stage.
I think you two must have children.
Where they still perform The Tempest regularly, and Act 1, Scene 1 gets ovations every time.
Maybe you've been pregnant many times.
Ariel and Prospero were 2 of our most popular names the year I was born, but Indra, Doda, and Oya always top the charts.
To build and hold water?
Our dawns are dark, and heat seeps slowly, radiating from rocks and roots before we even see amber glow.
I've been that way too, but reasons I can't recall.
What is a flood warning?
I pushed my little boats out of Bracken and into the stream, though I remember them falling away.
What is a retention pond?
Does your world put up safeguards where rain falls away?
Irrigation is outlawed, but we harvest water where we can and share when we don't need our full subvention.
Oh, here rains in hail mercilessly, or so opine gardeners.
I feel the wind building its net when I go out for my evening walk, something holding us all together or holding us back.
A bus driver, beep, 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 beep.
Our bodies slacken 4 p.m.'s gradual flame stroke.
Rain sheets her route just one street over.
Most folk lay down each night whispering, yes, this is a good year.
Everyone here studies rain. There's just so much of it.
And near enough at hand, the nightstand's drinking glass resonates sundown's pull tide.
We also alt plus controlled worry.
Hopeful incantations aside, we pride ourselves on our quenching pills and powders.
Do moths drown?
It's an ultramarine cluster bomb, my lung whistle.
Do birds drown?
In, out, in, out, in.
Do
in,
fish
in.
drown if pulled backward? waters?
Like breathing through muslin.
Can chickens drown in a water bowl?
I can't remember the last time I felt a stranger's skin.
Can raccoons drown dogs?
I live in a small town.
How long does it take a wasp to drown?
It's easy to cross away from oncoming bodies and keep your substance.
How long does it take an ant to drown?
My pinky once brushed another woman's curly gray-black hair on the bus.
Rain? It's just what's practiced here. A stranger who cool fingers us daily.
She didn't feel it, didn't look. I never stood out in the rain or rinsed my feet in a puddle, even as a child.
While rainfall gets counted very precisely here.
We were taught not to acknowledge what falls from the sky.
As if for a star chart.
Ash or wash.
But extra zeros glide in somehow.
To not get drawn into shame and speculation.
Maybe that's the transmission.
Thanks, Amaranth and Terri. Our next reader is Tracy Jane Gregory. Tracy is a cross-genre writer, fabric artist, she made that quilt, and queer feminist who's earned her MFA from the University of Bothell in the Creative Writing and Poetics program. She's published work in Best American Experimental Writing, the Anthology They Said, and multi-genre anthology of contemporary collaborative writing by Black Lawrence Press, and most recently, Oscillator Press with their chapbook, Possessive Spirit, a Beginner User's Guide. Please welcome Tracy.
Hello, thank you. First, I want to thank Cam for hosting this reading and having my art on the walls, and then Woogie and Snail Trail Press. The quilt was actually published in one of the issues, so thank you for publishing my work and inviting me here. Okay, so today I'm going to read a poetic statement that I've been working on in my mind for many years, but I finally put on paper because of this reading. So again, thank you. Okay, a poetics of women, writing, and addiction. While waiting to board my flight here, I come across a video of Cara Delevingne on my Instagram feed, an interview with Vogue about her newfound sobriety. The model addresses paparazzi photos of her getting kicked off of Jay-Z's private jet. In these photos, she dons a greasy scalp with crunchy waves of blonde hair, dangling over her thinning jaw and an oversized t-shirt of Britney Spears. She isn't wearing any shoes, so her bright orange socks carry her body across the tarmac. Was this a callback to Britney in that gas station bathroom? Even though these photos made everyone in Delevingne's life concerned for her well-being, at the time, she thought she was fine. But that's the nature of the disease, she says, pounding a fist into her delicate palm. The resistance towards something is really how much more you need it. Back at the airport, I've reached the end of my kale and ginger smoothie, slurping loudly to inhale any last remnants of beet juice. Delevingne continues. I didn't want to face everything, whether it be my own self-hatred, which is an interesting thing to say because it's not like, woe is me, my life is hard. It's not. I close out the video. Self-identified addicts like Delevingne like to paint this love affair between drug use and self-loathing. If the root cause of addiction is just hating yourself, then when you finally come around to self-care, your drug use is no longer an issue, right? Well, the funny thing is, I don't hate myself. I never have. I actually think I'm pretty witty, very giving person, humble. So, how did I end up in a Motel 6 on St. Paddy's Day, 2007, hot railing crystal meth and shotgunning the smoke into a stranger's mouth? I've been trying to answer some form of this question for 16 years now. I've seen drug counselors, attended 12-step programs, read addiction memoirs, watched videos of celebrities like Delavigne share their trials and tribulations of the rehab cycle. But I've never been satisfied with this binary thinking that my drug and alcohol use is a disease and that it's not actually me. My most recent attempts at discovery have been revisiting my journals from age 13 to my present age of 31 to find any mention of drugs or alcohol. And I believe I found the very first entry I ever wrote about using, and I'll share it now. Sometime in 2006, in a letter I never actually delivered to a friend. By the way, last night when I called you, I was so tripping out on NyQuil. Dude, it was crazy. I started sweating like a whore because my body was trying to get it all out of my system. I passed out at least twice. I also found what I believe is my first writing while high on a substance. July 12th, 2006, 2:32 a.m. Fucking lights, stop flashing! I mean, they do that all the time. I'm starting to think it's my eyes. That's fucking scary. Maybe I don't know I'm blinking or something? And here's the first poem I've ever written that mentions drug use of some sort. July 20th, 2006, 1:39 a.m. I'm in love with the chords, the ones I shoved in your face before. They coiled up, grabbed a hold of me, and told me this mess was washed in from the shore. Now the love is weaved in through the tangles, and the hate is floating above thin air. The tides are high, but sadly, I'm not. And not even my lover seems to care. All jokes aside, at young me, what I've discovered is that I wrote a lot while high on drugs. It was an obsession. I'd sneak out of my childhood home in the middle of the night, snort and smoke all the things, come home and write bad poems until the sun came up. I found 3 full college-bound notebooks, all spanning the 6 months that I consistently used every day, and then all of a sudden, nothing. From the years 2007 to 2008, I stopped writing. And I realized this was when I got sober. It wasn't until I went off to college and started drinking heavily again that I returned to writing. What is it that drives me to write when I'm using or consuming alcohol? What is it that drives me to use and consume? Are these two urges related? In a 1978 interview with High Times, Susan Sontag admits that she uses speed to write. After being asked why there's a long history of writers on stimulants, she says, "I think it's because it's not natural for people to be alone. I think that there is something basically unnatural about writing in a room by yourself, and that writers and painters need something to get through all those hours and hours of being by yourself. Digging inside your own intestines." Sounds very practical, but I don't think I've ever shoved a rock in my nose for practical reasons. Neither was I ever trying to pound the pavement to meet a deadline with my journal writing. Writing while and about being high is more personal than that. Although when using, I certainly felt like something was digging at my intestines. In the essay, Radical Indulgence, Excess Addiction and Female Desire, Karen Kopelson argues that women writing their drug use is actually a transgressive act. Quote, a kind of embodied practice of freedom. She leans into the association between constraint, reason, and masculinity, and argues that women behaving unreasonably and indulging in the excess of drugs is defiantly feminist. I can get on board with this. Gender performance played a very heavy role in my relationship to substances. I took advantage of the old adage, bitches smoke for free. So that meant I had to cater to the needs of men and boys to get high. This certainly trickled into my writing, not just in content, but in the ability to let go. I could be vulnerable, wild, and stupid in my writing in a way that could have gotten me taken advantage of or even killed in the real world. However, not all feminist theorists agree with this one. Maggie Nelson critiques Hopelesson's notion of transgressive addiction in her book On Freedom, stating that this argument depends on an understanding of sobriety as, quote, self-denial and filled with supreme values of moderation and restraint. Yeah, I can see how Hopelesson playing with a gender binary is problematic. But then Nelson continues, making a flagrant generalization of addicts by stating that, quote, those in the grip of addiction are not known for distinguishing the defiance of norms and values we might think deserve defiance. I think Nelson is not giving addicts enough credit. Sure, most people's reasons for abusing substances might not be rooted in subversing norms, but a person who is addicted still has awareness that they live in a gendered world, especially if they are houseless and in the streets. I've heard plenty of monologue from someone who uses in the Tenderloin of San Francisco about their personal turmoil problematized by their race, gender, sexuality, or other forms of identity, impacting how their community interacts with them, or rather, refuses to interact with them. So to say that those in the grip of addiction are not known for distinguishing anything, let alone norms and values, further belittles folks who struggle with addiction. But I digress. Let's return to my journals, one that could be enlightening for the debate on women and addiction. So this is from March 19th, 2019. It seems I often come to the page when I'm overwhelmed. A regurgitation, but not in a chaotic mess of vomit to get the sick out. There's no relief or therapeutic upchuck. It's more of a spiral of words towards further sickness. Even these words feel so familiar, it seems overkill to return to them. One of the instructors I work with says writing is recursive. She says this to get our students out of the perfectionist mindset and into the understanding that writing is a process. Revision or invention asks us to return to previous steps, versions, or ideas. But my recursive writing feels as if I continuously return to the same idea, as if I need to relearn or have realized I have not yet learned how to care for myself. I return again and again to writing about my ailments, particularly about the fragility of my mind-body connection and how my mind often fails my body. Why this return? Are we all disconnected and obsessed with our failing bodies? Is all of our writing and art addressing this failure? Many religions ask us to sever the mind-body connection, to connect with our spirit or reach a state beyond physicality. Many philosophers have likened our connection with our bodies to being animalistic. We need to use our intellect to rise above. Capitalism asks us to separate our mind from our bodies to produce like a machine. If we don't listen to our body's needs, we can implement what the authority tells us we need. Even being in education, as students and teachers, we are asked to ignore the needs of our body for specific hours of the day. No food or drink in the classroom. No movement or use of the restroom to distract us from our thinking minds. Of course, the truth is, our bodies are powerful. And severing our connection to our bodies makes us weak and vulnerable. We look to the outside to teach us how to refuse that connection, paying money, time, and labor, but as long as there is a third party involved, we can't return. They are blocking our way, but our bodies are smart and resilient. They know what we need, we just have to listen. That's the end of the journal entry. So there's no way in these 4 pages that I can decipher why my identity as a writer is wrapped up in drug and alcohol use, but maybe if I listen to my body, I can one day figure it out. Thank you.
Tracy. The next reader is Jace Brittain. Jace is the author of the novel Sorcerer, out from Schism Press in 2022. He runs the small press Carry and Bloom Books with the poet and book artist Rachel Zebex. Please welcome Jace.
Can you all hear me all right? I feel immediately at home in this space. This is beautiful. I feel immediately at home as soon as I got into Snail Trail. It was kind of a dream press for me, and this is a whole book about like a snail metamorphosis, and but I chickened out and I didn't send something from this because I thought they must get all this great snail stuff all the time. But coming full circle, and I'm going to read some of it here for y'all. Novel, couple metamorphoses going on, some Unica Zern references, that's all you need. Ko non drong. All dried up or drying up and crying, only the sounds of tears not falling. What luck, what lousy wrung luck. In this heat, they said don't start with the weather, but that's all there is for some folks like him. When Felix understands something, he doesn't believe it, a practice. I submit to the cannibals I'm becoming. A near certainty, Felix fell, fallen still, against a current situation in which he could only guess that somehow he had lost his elasticity and collapsed after one violent expectoration. Poor me, thought Felix, now scrunched up, ass up, with little motor control, drooling, dirty, bloody, face down on the cracked pavement in the sun, thinking about snails, how snails looked, how snails had looked when he had had them inching all over his chest, a desperate and failed cure for what ails him, a failed cure since, really, they had been eating him alive, hadn't they? All right. Skip a little bit. The Destroyer, Philosophia. Oswalda Zu K of primary co-conspiracy is descended from the honest of Antiquera, and thus rightly of the Order of the Jar and Splendors, whose bronze emblem she kept close and hidden on the grounds despite the betrayal and expulsion from which she suffered and landed as an illness in the same place as me, and her coding was always in part dedicated to the promises of uninterrupted service to currant-lilied she. Alchemia 2. The snails, those runic tracers that had taken the time, plotting out their own graveyard on Felix's chest, a cure, a guess, an unnamed prayer, a slow mutilation. The living division of the alchemic grocery list, the beast slow and slovenly feeding on him, sticky paths almost invisible except to the readers, the mages, the white coat sages quacking around his strapped-down gurney bed. Eaten alive, and neither the least nor the last of it. The begged question then being one of cannibalization, answered in an infinite loop of sputtering and gross slime. Become snail, you eats what you are. Transformation isn't very becoming, Felix thought, and then farted. Snaps for that, I appreciate it. I said static is noise, and I said static is movement, and I said static is stillness. Eat, say, there are many of many regrettable sentences to return to the source. Eat, say, everything regurgitated is gold. Don't be what's gnawing inside out. Don't be shell-chunked nothing or nothing at all. If they ever find my dirty picture, which I took of Owen Wister, the West will be unwon. His vomit dreams then, or perhaps in an amalgamation of its many selved and celled visions of every meal that has activated their hum, gotten a rise out of their so-to-speaks, and then every meal they become in the process. Oh gods, everything is alive, Felix thinks in sharing this vision with those he has expelled. Can a snail dream itself a moth, or must those images unveil more slowly than that? I wrote these numbers as small as I could for some reason. That could be it. No, it's this one. Okay. Astronomia 2, love. What a hoot about love darts. He hadn't even known until he'd felt the diminutive sting, the charm of which was lost on him, the sting, too, in seconds. Snails, you see, have a little love dart, distinct from genitalia, which expelled and lodged in another body casts a little spell, increases successful mating, reproduction, by as much as 770% OG. Cupids, he knows these stories come from that, or maybe the nature books at the sanatorium library are black with dried expectorates. Sometimes a word will seem to rise from that dark and dry sea, the ridges of the characters surfacing in the right light. He can't decide if snails are one or the other, or both, when or whether they have love darts to spare. So a lot of the alchemical stuff in this comes from a really strange visit to a place called Narrenturm in Vienna. It's an old sanatorium. There's a metal chair on the roof where they were testing out early versions of like electroshock therapy when there was a lightning storm. You can imagine the rest. And Narrenturm means Fool's Tower. So Casmus Fool's Tower. Although by nickname others compared the building to a cake, Felix knew it was in fact shaped like a snail shell, or a sphincter, knew as well as anyone the perfect, impossible shrinking corners the shape implied, and was trying to explain in the center yard, in view of every blank window, that blared invasion, that this open center of the spiraling universe was the only where anybody had chance to collapse, destroy, or escape. To chuckles from the crowd and a suspicious nothing from those horrible windows. It was no cake. It could shift any time to any or no place along a crystal line of correspondence, so that although it was oppressively the house of sickness today, it might be the movie house tomorrow. Let you slip the mirror's ledge into the firehouse, or voila, slide away a gleaming line into another forgetful example of space. Go back to a short Haruspexus. And lastly, encoded a short build 1 or 2, new, axanthismic eclipsing plumage, CF: a feather enclosed at considerable risk. Thank you.
You're tall. Thanks so much, James. Last but not least for this first block, I'd love to welcome Kenning JP García. Kenning is an Afro-absurdist diarist and humorist. Z is the author of the chapbook Ghost Notes from Spiral Editions. Z is also an editor at Rigorous and Dream Pop Press. Please welcome Kenning.
Technical difficulties for no good reason right now, of course. But let's see here. I can make this happen anyway. So, hold on. So I'll read from this and I really want to. This is Ghost Notes. This came out recently from Spiral Editions. The soul finds the absolute verb, the new word, the inner land. Antoinette our toad. Don't know what to do, just shrivel to a raisin in the tub while dreams deferred will take this idea into another direction, shift the image from this makeshift sea to the sun, but perhaps both can share the beach somewhere far away from here, somewhere that speaks to both a pre-sentimentality and a presentimentality. Then, when grapes have become the destiny, as so said above, then may the children reject the cookies that made of this and these domestic products, so gross to a child's tongue, but acceptable to an older one who has known hunger and sweet and savory and has cast off the notion of flavors in favor of food only as fuel, and who knows the woes of constipation. The goal is never a pure silence, but to be released from the grasp of purposeful and intended noises, to escape both music and conversation, as well as alerts and alarms, announcements, things that are all context. The words and sounds of animals or nature or the world in general is fine. That content has been created for less directed reasons, causes, at least to these ears, to be displaced in a space is not a discomfort, but an experience and an expression of the elsewhere upon the self, this non-self that has asked for escape until escape came to be and came to be undone. Conclusion does not always mean completion, but means that further participation / collaboration is now off limits. Absurd reality is the only one that has an emergency exit. Benjamin Fontaine, Existential Monday Philosophical Essays. Cherish the craft, throw away the art. An aggregate of qualities, a quantum with a shape, none is entirely actual, none entirely lacking in actuality. Martin Buber, I am thou. Nothing was all of a sudden. No suddenness, no things, nothing. Slow dissolving life and time under the tongue of experience or inexperience. On both a grand scale and over some petty shit. Nothing too harsh, nothing too much, but just a little divine push. If the cosmos can't accommodate the little things, then how is it supposed to handle the big shit? Happiness, a kind of suffering and continuous misery, joy bursts, violent unglues. Judy, across borders, could have been someone, could never have been anybody else, though, and that's the problem, the issue. The first issue in the series that will be ongoing into and past death. Tension and elasticity are two forces mutually complementary, which life brings into play. Henri Bergson, laughter. I can't even turn pages. Everything's a technical difficulty for me. Other. It was water under the bridge. One. It was a house on fire. Other. It was only water seeking its own level. One. It was merely smoke when there was fire. Other. It was a well-run drive. One, it was simply yelling in a crowded theater. There is no more giving up in here, only pauses and slowing down, taking it a half a step at a time. Knowledge can only be gained by forgetting. Judith Shalansky, an inventory of losses. Love contains the dregs of hatred. Margaret.
Tell them you love their writing. Okay, we'll be back. dancing and singing in her apartment, writing and doing her hair. Please welcome Dana.
All right, I'll put it back down. How's everyone doing? All right, this is a new poem. I wrote it today. I can't turn pages either, so shout out to Kenning. So I wrote this poem while I was listening to the album Around the World in a Day by Prince. And I like this album a lot because it was supposed to be his last. After Purple Rain, he was like, I'm done. Like, I've had enough. This is the last one. So I thought I would write a poem while listening to it. So this is called Around the World in a Daze. I begin singing through my laughter, bending my back and flipping out, over landlines underwater, wading through 9 dandelion roots, still remaining, tangled and caressing the earth's core. Time zones mapped out in corduroy, velvet, and paisley prints, and returning messages to the surface like they are playing the game telephone. My mom said we would pick them this summer and make dandelion wine like her mother used to. A ritual tends to tend sometimes more than a memory that only flickers. I blink 3 times, future me sips, then chugs the sweetness. I stay in school, I avoid the garbage passerbys throw at me. I paint my footsteps with rose and gold and raspberry lime. I refuse once more. I rinse what's mine. I pay the price of walking in through the outdoor. Oh, and this is like an extra line. I jump on a trampoline so high that I reach the other side of the ocean and catch 2 tambourines midair. All right. All right, so this poem is inspired by my partner Ian, who plays D&D almost every day. He's in 2 campaigns, and so he asked me. I wanted to be in this campaign so bad. I wrote a whole backstory. So, and then I didn't have time. But I made a poem out of the backstory, and so the title is called First D&D Character Backstory. All right. I am Phoenixin Phalite, Zenny for short, and I am a sorcerer by birth, a cipher for my deceased twin sister's healing quest. My parents are 2 angels, Enix and Fia, who assisted in trying to solve all living beings' demands, dilemmas, and wishes. They were doing pretty well, helping to bring Ranunculus Village out of a 504-year-long drought and restore the natural landscapes until they couldn't help one being, even a little bit, a demonic spirit named Olaf. Olaf possesses abilities to enter all realms within known worlds and cause interdimensional natural disasters, including ancestral hurricanes and destructive droughts. When Olaf received intel that Enix and Fia blocked their most destructive attack on Ranunculus yet, Olaf captured Enix and took Fia into an inaccessible realm of icy darkness on a cliff overlooking a glittery gray sea of mysterious liquid. Fia was 9 months pregnant with twins at the time and had to give birth by herself. Olaf put a hex on Fia's body before placing her there, causing one twin to live and one twin to die. When the living twin was born, Fia managed to raise her until she was 4, and then Olaf returned to take her away into a spooky realm world that became all she knew. The twin who lived is possessed by the spirit of the other twin, the living twin, me, is following in the footsteps of my angelic ancestors and becoming a healer, constantly getting confused as to whose ethics I'm following, mine or hers. I would like to figure out a spell to release my sister from my body so she can be free and or break the curse Olaf put on all of us. I also want to find my mother and father and reunite us all, even if only for a moment in time. And so, like, a little bit of backstory to the backstory. My parents only mentioned this like twice. So once when I was young, and then my father, and then recently my mother, but I actually was supposed to have a twin. So, ... All right, and, turn, sorry, it got dark. All right, lastly, I'm just gonna read, if it loads, there we go. A poem I wrote with Zach Brown, another poet. And it's called The Great Salt Lake Storm. Be enough love held by landscape, with mountains that circle thick. Use your singing salt skin to enhance resistant reticence. Dance like you're initially hesitant, with outward affection. Wait for you to stumble right home, then secretly store a reservoir. Turn the waters red, spiral there and swallow it up. Your stinging nose is temporary. Do not leave. Release rolled motion through watered air guitars. Fold and fold as you imagine a private space, where impulses keep the lights on. Journal in places it wouldn't make sense to. Move one way or another into what's possible. Become the right kind of storm where you can float. When unique sandscapes are mirrors resting on the limits of everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Our next reader is Ryan Bollenbach. Ryan, this is such a sweet bio. Ryan is a dream who barely remembers you. He's nostalgic, a little sad, distant, but warm. He's very pleased to meet you. Please welcome Ryan.
Hey everybody. Thank you for being here. Good to be with you all. This first poem appeared in Snail Trail. It was the first poem that was published from a book that I've spent like the last 4 years working on. So yeah, appreciate that very much. Greened inside me. The grass greened inside me. A copper-grown ringing early in my early years. The humid afternoon lung tumor beleaguers me, 40,000 leagues deep in my hot, low-cut lawn, air-sick breathing in my rusted diving suit antique. A Rorschach of sweat stains on the stomach of my black band shirt. An untraceable hum diagnoses me. My weary arms whisper parley to the shotgun groupings of light in the noon sun. My articulating fingers pull me up toward the cooler air. Then I fall off the house's siding, climbing the wisteria. Being grounded inside the smell of soil, I exercised on the ground with green breathing exercises at mantis eye level. I choked down the fuck breath and carried yellow pollen in the lacerations of my nostrils. I hid from the sun's spite in oak tree canopy dust time behind my house. The indifferent sound the cicadas were carving in the tree's branches created a gold horizon inside me, so I bent my knobbly knees and bowed to the brook's anachronistic babbling. Smell of mold under my boyhood desk comfort me. Light my synapses after the sun has downed and the dull smell of cum in summer emanates from that thin tree's wide leaves. Light my synapses as my bitter tea sips me with that end of day's clarity, its feet propped on the sill of my open window. Today, I got so hot I lost cognition. Into my window's open mouth, the blade of grass-shaped fingers of time reached. I heard only a whipping sound. And to greater and lesser extents, all of these are about growing up in Florida. Adagio for strings. No one wanted this smoke. Not Willem Dafoe or the albatross whose wings Willem borrowed as splint for his splayed arms as if real bullets ripped through him. Not the wisteria planting its tendrils on the ground sweaty palm like the sun taking pennies as a return investment on heat. I drove my truck at 40 miles per hour over the gray-blue asphalt and stared into the eyes of some sandhill crane crossing the road unfazed by the wind whipping off my steel bumper. On the radio, a composer was talking about the hope he found in the last notes of Sam Barber's Adagio for Strings. As if earth body memory, Mark's corpse rose from a bouquet of white violets on the side of Interstate 75. As if earth body memory, Chris's corpse rose from the gated-in parking lot of a pain management center in Northeast Tampa. The ground swallowed every traffic sign in immune system response after swallowing both on the same road. I drive that interstate northbound to escape the ocean, overtaking Florida's serrated coasts. I kept only the smoke, the Black Hawk's wingspan, and the violin notes piled on top of each other like bodies to be burned. Through the smoke haze, I see the crane's unflinching face. At the foot of a tree, I slipped into dreams, woke skewered by what the composer said and the question the crane's eyes asked in response. From my morning stomach, I pulled speakers made of the hearts of the alligators I've eaten. Placing them between saw palm bushes, I started them broadcasting Adagio for Strings in a staggered order. In the clearing, there were bushes of pentas and evolvus in the shapes of soldiers kneeling to the sound. There were squirrels kneeling, snakes contorting their bodies to kneel, bobcats kneeling, Chris kneeling, Mark kneeling. The dust sun made sharp shadows of the withered tops of trees. The wind blew its violin trills, and all the hearts I planted fell on their side in unison, restarted in unison from the top. Just as the shadows grew longer, blue smoke rose from the grasses. And last one. And it's a bleeding title, I'll just read through it. As many of you who I'm sure are poets understand what I'm saying. Okay. I wear my hair long for company. With it, I savor the rain. I administer death rites for my pair of scissors. I glue leaves in my thick waves so my shadow becomes stranger and the stranger stays close. Migrant birds leave home in winter because they have no one left to welcome them. Now I'm projecting. Now birds are projecting from my hair. I miss them in the warm smell of seeds and berries. I carve the beaks of my fallen friends into forks and knives, stack them neatly in a wooden box, and throw them off the side of a mountain wearing my swan dress. Sometimes I wish I could light them on fire and use them to trim my armpit hair to clear a smooth surface for tar and feathers, and trounce through the aviary squawking. I collect my hair into a pillow and lay down on a rock in a cold, wet cave. I can't fall asleep, so I style it for the revolution. A vast flock of birds march inside the cave's open mouth. We make a vid together for TikTok, me and my prehistoric cadre, but I don't bother to look at it. I know my birds, that's spelled with the B-Y-R-D-Z, by the way. I know my birds so well, I recognize them by the scent of their individual ambitions. The sound of their popping crests beat out a call to arms in Morse code. Hear that soft patter? That's every bird I've ever met marching down the beachhead in a single file line to join us. Not a single one choked by a single plastic ring. We march resplendent, radiant to the bosom of the vast seas. There are galaxies in our black marble eyes.
Caught in my earring. Thank you, Ryan. Is Jen Calkins here? Okay, you are. Hi. Okay, I didn't see you. Walk in. Okay, I'd love to welcome Jen Calkins and Marcken. Jen is an environmental lawyer, evolutionary biologist, and anti-disciplinary writer and artist. Her most recent book is the lyric noir novel Fugitive Assemblage from Third Thing Press. In 2019, she and Marcken initiated a multi-year project engaging the climate crisis via durational performance. A poetic interruption collected in Annihilation is underway, and collaborative creative events. This year, she's curating Delisted 2023, a year-long collaborative creative engagement with the extinction crisis. Marcken is a writer and interdisciplinary artist. Her credits include multimedia installations, short and feature-length films, and hybrid fictions and realities of various lengths. She is author of the lyric novella The Accident, an account by Deuville in 2020, and she is editor and publisher of The Third Thing. Please welcome Jen and Anne.
Okay, short. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone here, for being here, for making this possible, and for this always amazing space. I'm going to kind of introduce you very briefly to the project, and then we're going to alternate reading. So I am super into QR codes now. I cannot wait to tell my kids I brought some fucking QR codes. So I put them on the chair over there. Our project. Follow this QR code. Some of the poems are on the website, but also you'll learn a lot more about this sort of ongoing collaboration that we're doing. And I also delisted, if there's a QR code for that too, so that's also there.
They look very similar.
Yeah. And so this project, you read about it on the website, but I do want to start with, it started with my legal analysis of the Paris Agreement that was published in the Washington International Journal of the Law in 2018. I couldn't find a copy of it that I hadn't burned, so here's a piece of it, so you can see it. And the last thing I want to say about my parts is that, so Anne will talk a little bit more about sort of pulling words and stuff out of this text. And some of my text that you'll hear has bits from my paper. And actually it was absolutely essential that Anne, I couldn't have done this without Anne. Like, Anne made these poems possible.
That feels like a disclaimer.
Oh, nice. But also, I want to make clear that there's some other stuff I've appropriated for this, because that's the thing I do. I think always of Akhmatova's poem, and I paraphrase. I steal right and left and everything from Silence in the Night. And I think that all the time. A lot of what I'm working with now are white texts, because I'm trying to excavate whiteness. And I feel very comfortable stealing from white authors, particularly historical white authors. None of you in here, I'm not stealing from you all. But some of these are from witch trial transcripts. Some of them are Coleridge. Some of them are like documents from insane asylums by white psychiatrists. So that's in here.
I'm going to talk a little bit so that we can just flow then. I'll just say
All right.
a little bit more,
Hands up.
which is just to say that all the words and spaces in these come from that now incinerated document. And so these poems are deeply indebted to Jennifer, and the only thievery has been from my collaborator in this case. So yeah, why don't we just then flow from one to the next?
Yeah.
You're gonna start
Yeah,
us
so
off? Okay.
I'll start with one. And I would recommend you go to the website just because you can see one of Anne's poems in space. And her poems are really elegant when she reads them, but they're also incredibly elegant in space.
One more thing. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Louise.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you all again.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like I need a little space to kind of move around, so I'm just going to do this. And if I'm not up at the mic, I will project, don't worry. The granite lifts. The granite lifts, the boulder cut to slivers and stairs. The crimes are extremely serious. This view, this breath of air, climate change is its authority. Mountaintop, self-deceived with mental reservations. The early leaf rot, vine maple, the wet forest perfuming. This party ratcheting, racketing, the breath stayed with praying. There is no such thing as granite. We are all underwater now. There is no such thing as granite. Was a flash of golden fire. Have I been gazing at the western sky? No such thing as ocean, as sky. Some pine seeds lie buried germinating. It is a father's tale, a young tree emerging. I know they will learn what seems to be a world. There is no such thing as world. Only the touch again and again, stripping scales, fennel, the link, the devil-breathing gas, searching inconsistently with a need for food. These are the chicory at the edge of the disturbed grass, a bleeding fairy helmet. What are other species? There is no such thing as world, unstring, unimagined to the point of saying that thing, unnaming, unresolved, undo ideas, environments. Mother, I am frightened. Unravel co-productions, cheap nature, Anthropocene, I can never say Capitolocene, the other Ocene. Nationhood, this immense unresolved grief. I could not draw my eyes from theirs. There is no such thing as species. The black-capped chickadee sees me and comes closer. The last time carbon dioxide was this high, humans did not exist. Occurring at perhaps 3 million years ago, who tried to protect children, twigs from certain trees, and let the sheep see the emergence? The black-capped chickadee as a species predating our own emergence. There is no such thing as granite. In this climate regime, I am in dire need of salutary guidance, being as I am terrifyingly stretched from insufficient to critically insufficient. These are not the bodies of prehistoric men, sore grieved and troubled by these their practices. It is as though amnesia repeatedly occurs. Confessed I would be an accessory to mine own death, our crisis, our decision-making processes, international customary law, the agenda, 5 additional judicial opinions relevant to an expansion, chickadee eye, the chickadee calling, approaching, manifold motions making little speed. This is not a moment of fear. The brilliance of this moment is blinding.
Tell us what the end is, too. This is today. This is ice melt, sea level rise, is release, is us bound together, is black, and white is decades or even centuries, is thousands of years, is so brief, is reaching apocalypse, is climate. Change is an attack, is haunting, is still and cold, and it shifts the future we know. We know we will perish in storms or heat waves, or of strange diseases, or in violence amplified by famine, or in any of 1,000 other ways. Annihilation is underway, is an anticipated absence, is in the ocean and the solace of phenomena. Loss is full and long, is catastrophic, is clear, is now, is growing. Devastation, migration, death, wildfire, drought is where the cost is calculated, is located in time and space. This is, where is, what is, when is climate change. It is, oh is, oh, 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 oh. The end, see it is. Halt is oh, is it, is oh, is no. Is the end, is no, oh, oh no. No, we don't have a word. It is so vast. We cannot see it. We fail to grasp the immensity. The threat is so diffused and scattered, is us.
Aflame, the wildfire as though the god. Aflame, the wildfire as though the god I sought were there, sparking along the rocky path, urging a blaze to the woods, hemlock shod. What doubly layered question this wild wrath? God's notion, only the ghosts of the pines remain, a murder or injury by these means, the lightning, the arson, confines of that deity passing over my whole body. Upon returning, I knew the air that had once raced towards me in waves of wind created by fire, leaves that flew about like butterflies, the ashy graves, the roaring forests o'er-wooded, maimed, I am always and ever licked by flame.
Tell us what the end is, 6. How we meet the future is narrow and is broad, is a window, and is the breeze, is close, it is a clock, is tick and take, is give, is hope, is close. The end is thus and furthermore, is ease over low, go down, is on, is in, is hard as fire. It is a sense of failure, is to make or be a sacrifice. It is the heart, is to be, still is, 2.5 degrees Celsius, 3.0 degrees Celsius, 4.0 degrees Celsius, is time, and again, is a rising sea, a storm, a fire, is the need to face the current, is change, is the end.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chen and Anne. Our next reader is Ching-In. Ching-In is the author of The Heart's Traffic, a novel and poems, and Recombinant, which won the 2018 Lambda Literary Award for Transgender Poetry. They've received fellowships from Kundiman, Lambda, Watering Hole, Cancerat, Imagining America, and the Intercultural Leadership Institute, as well as the Judith A. Markowitz Award for Exceptional New LGBTQ Writers. They teach in the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences and the MFA in Creative Writing and Poetics at the UW Bothell. Please welcome Ching-In.
Hi everyone, how are y'all doing? for hanging out. Thanks for all the other readers. I loved hearing all your work. Thanks for Cam. I just love this bringing together of the reading room and the gallery. And I'm so glad to be part of this. And thank you, Oogie and Snail Trail Press. So I'm going to read from a series that was published in Snail Trail Press. And essentially, I was recording my strange and weird travels from moving from Houston, Texas to here in a daily way. And I made all these threads, and then I threaded them together, essentially. So I'm going to read kind of straight, like as if it's all one voice, but it's actually different kinds of voices that are threaded together. And to see that, you'll have to go to look at Snail Trail Press. So go take a look at it. South in hundreds. Oh, sorry, one more thing. If you've taken my class, you probably had to write hundreds, which is this form where you just write things that are in 100 words. And these are transformed hundreds. South in hundreds. 100. 100 seeds gone awry. Red morning. You wanted a flat piece of land, so we visited. Don't know how the ground received my lit white eyes. Clamshell gone break. I felt cool and dull underneath. She gave me the other word for wild. I thought, too, that there must be other ways leading to darkest color, all universe full before you set each candle soft with mouth and war. Only this small circle of containment guaranteed from contaminant new growth. No more stories from bending in their tiny units, small, certain houses. Someone with cut eyes pushes off. In different city, you breathe. Grow back lichen, bring on flood. In the new days, we demand all visitors be named worship and incubator fire. 200. Next black morning, risking from skin. You wanted a rising and flaking. Still trace above ground, sliver I come up in forest. Our desire stayed the surface. They had to allow movement, you said. Pour out water, handmade, crank down for next dreamer. Your skin mark, a flexible break, unconcerned with storms. What does it feel like to soak wine past border where everything eats? Question mark. No one looks to see a mismatched building rigid with memory. In the old town, we banish memorials frequently. No sharp answers to questions no one asked. No neutral upsweep, no flame. If you swirl, it's lost on her anyway. After a few times, I do arrive to tell you. These memories, not stories. Watching facts straighten out. Not the feeling precise, not strained passages of body. We open gaps, test by tongue after Tuesday's drying of the creek. 300. Tough of your cheek, ignoring what was coming. I didn't ask or knock. Didn't know what to say when you shut the door. Chilling, sour liquid, humming rib at Cup's Ridge. Bitters in the incinerator. Sometimes mobs. No corrections or adjustments needed to scatter. I don't like the sturdy, fat grain or the fruit tree. She made it clear she doesn't celebrate royalty, no respect for any kaleidoscope. I don't want together to bracket our thoughts without fluid, not to compress many-thronged throat into thin sliver. To be devoured is to clear windshield. Still wanting to preserve half-life before expire. 400. A rat taken by surprise. My favorite mouth again. I never did learn how to make dark liquid or to hate your brethren. Blockade of grains. When night flees, nothing enters tunnel, even bite size. You did learn what it took to melt your own shell, grow it back to ebony. You don't come from where I grow, to trick, toss down the dull pennies, the ugly bricks. Nose full of last year's rent, don't celebrate without decompressing sugar. They don't see many hooded white lenses from her neck. I wish I remembered to show up to fill house. You alone said, let them be, long live pufferfish, leave feet planted. And the last one, 500. Cages caked with light. You searched for me, knew counting sun would have kept me. How to disappear with the scatter of a bulb. We did not form any bridge. I write a letter if I make paper. A morning blue like grass, a disconnected skin from waiting tissue. If I get upright, how to ask for the simplest thing. These ramp remains, you tried to shield me from the sight, no houses in sight. Time to level the ground, unpeel light, no awestruck survivors. Growing up a sugar cream world nobody could afford. Sometimes I don't wish for anything. I want to see the whole world. Staying meant skipping breakfast to preserve lovely mouth bite. Don't make space for me. I strip bare to bald ear and weak fist. I want the past with all its anchors like a sunrise. We've arrived late in the game. Who is left but the hardiest soldiers weathered down and waiting past your time? Nothing left but press the light-hearted valve and fly. Erect temporary installation. Empty bowls of choke. Watery women turned to stone. All others turned up on knees. No more questions. Not much to eat but cardboard. We forced down handfuls, one sip of sweet fire, one cram of less than wood. You never do what crowd desires, whether marigold or nightlife, whether Oli or honest. Thank you.
Is Pamela here? Okay. We're going to take a 10-minute break then. Get drinks, go to the bathroom. We'll come back in 10 minutes. All right, thank you.
What's happening here? Time. You turn on the heater.
Yeah. Turn on.
On, yeah.
I have to open tomorrow at the
Okay,
coffee
thank you
shop,
for helping.
So I'll do this last one.
Okay.
Unless Whitney wants to. She's right here.
This has died.
Great.
This iPad just died.
Oh, certainly. Yes.
It's so cool. You have to get one.
No, you're going to get two.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to get two.
So, I mean, take a look at it. This is what it will. Yes. And your
At some point there will be 525. That point is far from now. We got all kids on deck.
Our first reader, Joe Hall, is a Buffalo-based writer and reading series curator in love with public space, garbage, and Cheryl. He is the author of 5 books of poetry, including Fugue and Strike, which is about to be released from Black Ocean, and Someone's Utopia. Get in touch with Joe at joehall.com or at joehall. Please welcome Joe Hall.
Thank you, Woogie, for housing my garbage obsession and brain composting worms with so much other vibrant work and putting it together in an utterly compelling package. There's no more important time than now to radically rethink eco-poetics. So I was very glad to be in that. And thanks to all the folks at CAM. I feel like this event, there's been just like a high degree of intention and purpose behind it. So it feels very special. So I'm gonna read a long piece in my new book thing, Fugue and Strike, about garbage and strikes and work and waste and refusing wastage. It's called Garbage Strike / trash can emoji, fire emoji. And I do want to hear what you have to say about garbage or waste. Fill me in. Okay, here we go. For it is spilling and spilling from several terminals, for it is coming and here and coming, for that as long as we live and after is a flood brimming to the lip, for it requires so much work beyond planning, piled against the windows, the eyes crossing boundaries to become its own life, blooming shit, exuberant. Thank you, drain. Thank you, gravity. No. 1.3 kilograms matter, some fossil fuel into 2 grams microchip, iPhone 22 chips, a 12-year-old JG dig waste 26 junk express beyond production and exchange and consumption. Note, stop humping rag picker. Continued, page 2, from thousands of garbage strikes, those documented and easy to find. New York, 1667. Mumbai, India, 1878. Toronto, Ontario, 1918. Paris, France, 1948. Okay, this goes on a long time. Vancouver, British Columbia, 2007. Naples, Italy, 2008. Seattle, Washington, with Columbus, Ohio, with Buffalo, New York, with Mobile, Alabama, 2012. Guangzhou, China, 2008, 2012 to 2013. Birmingham, UK, 2017, Paris, France, 2018. Abstract, a work to be with people, with multitudes, not take shit, work and obsession with turning trash around as tactic. Art must be destroyed in order to not become merchandise or an institutional icon. That's Herberto Pez with years in work, bad and failure to fix it with anyone go, though we try, dumb hope in my mouth. Note, stop humping ruins. If this is trash, send it back. Here's some prose. AZ server farm churns the image of its tidiness coach, blasts fuel in tons, burning to cool itself before collapse, greater sign extraction. Flood hits a thrift store that the other production of light dematerialized distributes far beyond the horizon. I stream the image of the moon hollowed out then caving in on its huge and heavenly self from the intake of the server farm's mind into its surface. In a pinch, policed inventory becomes waste looters transform into life. The contents of my mouth and colon ATM for a penthouse stranger CRT monitor, up to 8 pounds lead, 2 pounds copper, 620 pounds rock drill of the horizon for the island deep sea for the continental shelf, the asteroid moon, the lunar dust for the horizon, the drill of the horizon for the sublime is the scraping drill. Res extensa is your being, and your being to them. Hired to take a bunch of shit from her acerbic boss. Your job is to make X happy, records it, delivers the load, whole shifts of my only life spent clicking shit in the group inbox into the trash, last in, first out, no one else would bother. Will there be a beautiful city or ward, shitatoriums, many gendered and degendered, singled and multi-stalled spaces of beautiful extraction and excretion? Will there be a space of public salvage and reclamation and disassembly of the greatest machines of violence? Will we celebrate the decommissioning and destruction of pernicious things and institutions? Will the work of disposal be in perpetual rotation or purely elected to redeem the hours spent soaking someone else's sour feelings, exporting memory and account in bags of tumor fertilizer-filled sediment with clear labels, RE vintage, provenance, thick bottom tumble tumbler with alphabet block-sized ice cubes melting in cocktails of lead dioxin. Ice field offices flush their shit. Cop City funders, Norfolk Southern headquarters flush their shit. The Westin Hotel follow tenant of Buffalo's ice field office, draping a point of carceral intake with the facade of comfort, flushes its shit. If we can't separate ourselves from this shit, if we don't involve it in some other process, we die. If the rich can't export their guilt past the gates of their community, if we don't let the execs out of the vacuum bag, if no trash left the police station or gated communities, if no trash left the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, if no trash left the White House or the last three bosses' offices, if all I do is talk. From garbage to a riverside trailer park. And then we'll get back to garbage. This poem was also in Snail Trail. It's called On Other Water. Where I lived in the winter without heat, waking to the swan's fleets on the fingered inlet. What did I love? The nutria's orange teeth. And who else was poor here and swam naked? What travelers were? What heavy industry century makes it take on its humped back? The community boat in an inner lake, waiting as the currents shift. Clouds swell with rain from rack and image farms. Trails, gorgeous planets, letters of frost, due by 9. Okay, this is called trash can emoji, fire emoji. You're very generous. Asbestos powdered ink, Jay said. A poison redistribution. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Asbestos powdered the ink, Jay said, a poison redistribution ethos with the warmth of blue copper oxidized in vinegar, but whose hand gets to mix the place no one wants to be in, but all can go. Lone Star tick as noble virus vector that makes meat an allergen if you got to. Hack this inculta, the beings of power hitherto uncultivated by us, where the sovereign shall carry your shit. Waste value capitalism grinds the void through the dialectical pair, for their hell is a non-dialectical dust. For the island fortress of financialization from which they liquidate the world compacted from trash. Commons reformed into plantation. The EZLN reference democratizing dust. Purity is trash, and what's a flow? Carried, the waste, especially in its most corrosive forms, contain slander against all matters nation. To drift though this paper, thin lie, allows management to leave shits in the backyard of the poorest. For the dioxin, and I may be, and lead, and I am. Streams live for the channels, this I involves barf, rainbow. My servers serve grade F meat. Cash deposit of being that can be a power with yours. Garbage strike returns leech it to the shitter's teeth. Corrupt as shit, Ferris Bueller. That's Ferrous. I had a friend on a hunger strike once, and his kidneys started to fail, or was it his liver? I don't remember. But he asked the doctor why, and he's like, it's because your body's really bad meat, and it's eating itself. All right, I think this is the last poem. So this is in another eco-poetics journal, Mercury Furs, which I really love, and it's doing really great things in reconceptualizing eco-poetics. It's called Fugue 41, laid off at a cannabis grow in the country. So this is a true story. Miss Pebbles, plastic sheeting, the hoop house grid. Pot doubles us over seed tray tables. Wraps our backs in fists of stress muscles and squeezes. Seeds spill. Volunteer cannabis rises. Genders unsupervised. As I tap the time clock app before a gas station lunch, with nightlight whose ship is a fungus threaded through its crew, a game they carry in their mind before we all get fired on a whim but leave our techniques behind for some beer and Ray-Bans who wishes his phone were a gun. Sun drops on green hands pressed by paychecks in the oil. The fugue 41, dropped on green hands, grown into green hands, crushed into oil. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Joe. Our next reader is Nanya Jhingran. Nanya is a poet, scholar, and teacher from Lucknow, India, currently living by the coastal margin of the Salish Sea on the unceded lands of the Coast Salish people upon which the city of Seattle was built. She's an associate editor at Poetry Northwest, where she edits the book review section. Her recent work can be found in Waxwing, Mosslit, Poetry Northwest, and Cantheus, among others. You can find her online at nanyajhingran.com. Please welcome Nanya.
Thanks for having us, Woogie and Cam, Timothy, Whitney. Every time I read here, I feel like I want to be a poet. Sometimes I'm in an MFA and I'm like, do I want to be a poet? And then I come and read here and I'm like, I want to be a poet. So thank you. And thank you to all the readers. So lovely to hear you. Poem for a soundscape in flight. Neighbors all tossed awake by early morning bird call, and I throw open the living room window to let in summer's burnt clarity. One building over, a crow sun's wings extended on the lintel. On the library's living roof, once wintered reeds green, and wildflowers weave into the empty spaces between. Fledglings perch on street lights and apex the rebloomed trees. I look closely, notice when caw unlatches from bird and flies off on its unwinged trajectory. I do not capture this flight. Do not hold my phone up. Instead, let the unknown call permeate hearing, knowing a bird's call carries more than the bird's name. I stop looking for false answers. This one is a bleeding title too. Bird call, or a theory of desire, its phenotype ungeneralizable, fugitive, irrepressibly corresponding, still we aggregate it all to desire. From the Latin de, down from, and sidere, heavenly body, star constellation. Desire was first a pair of barrel eyes turned skyward, tracing the stars for silhouette articulations of what might come to be. Over time, having mapped constellations, aspects, their celestial transits, desire embossed the sky in lit landmarks, their movements signaling to absent objects, their light pointing ever away from themselves. Desire, now a wanting bereft of its object, left only with this ritual methodology. Melancholia, Freud called it, this irresolute, irrepressible object hunger, this returning again and again to what invisible flies overhead, past the canopy, unidentifiable song faint in the distance. What I want to, but cannot name in you, in the muffled chatter of the forest floor, in the ocean's piercing opacity, I name too, unnameable, crying to be recovered in me. Slated for Slate the street and sidewalk, slate the cracks forming there, slate the stillness of a storm-bound sky, slate the slats on the neighbor's roof, slate the runway the decommissioned planes linger on, and slate the river's surface that reflects this image. Slate what I know I must say before I've said it, just as, or is it, slate the winged migrants yawping ledgered since dawn. Slate the waiting for dusk and day's prescribed machinations keeping us from it. Slate then what the sun silently slips out from behind cloud cover. Slate the moonlight soon trickled through rips in the overcast. Slate too the decree and the surface the gavel strikes. Slate our silence through all this. Slate my fleeing into the anonymous immunities of hour. And slated for what exactly? And what in the meantime? Abstraction. This one's after a retrospective of Romar Bearden that the Fry put on recently, and I've been thinking about abstraction as a poet, and visual artists they do it so much better because they don't use words, and it's escaping words. I want to do that. Abstraction after Romar Bearden. Artist approaches subject, shuffles close, closer, then closer still, until what stares back is pure form intoned in texture. Unbound, agnostic to boundary, every particle of the morning kissed by what's near. To give myself this way to the world, holding nothing at arm's length. In golden day, every petal luminescent, story but not mirror. Instead an opening, mind stepping in. Blue the blue of India ink, blue the blue of near morning night, near morning air. From behind, the brown of lunch bags baroques the frame. Even when so immersed, especially when I'm desperate to describe, to place nouns like brass tacks around experience, pin ecstasy to testimony. Outside the museum, rivulets of bark on an aged oak I press my forehead to, blades of grass smothered underfoot, a study in igneous attention, a density I want to carry into the world. Veined mists marbled over rivers, spectrum rendered to discrete speck, breathing syntax of splatter, memory of stains washed over and over, to still action thusly, crevice, cavern, gut. I'll do one more. This one's called Reading Mina Alexander in Modest Town, Virginia. I married someone white, and their family was like kind of from the Midwest, kind of from the South. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I guess I was getting into it. This poem is about that, and I can never probably publish it for a long time or have many uncomfortable discussions. Reading Mina Alexander in Modest Town, Virginia. Driving onto the night-snuffed barrier island, lone sources of light, the freeway, 3 candles to each window in every passing house. By morning, peering at the Atlantic, held off by pockets of marsh grass, so dense I insist they must be traversable. I am present there only by force of metaphor, a form dependent on keeping a certain distance. I am always at that distance, or else too near to say. Lots for sale bleed unmarked into the ones inhabited, fenceless but for the graveyard. 3 headstones at the roadside edge of a corner yard. Grandpa would always point these out, you say, from the back seat. I built it so the grandchildren will have a place to congregate, my mother-in-law tells everyone who visits. In this family portrait, I am a fated accident, aberrant womb through which the past won't stop reproducing. scanning every geography for its fault lines. Well, was it I what ran along subcutaneous, cracked? At the beach, I am a crab scuttled along low dunes, follow the fading traces where in storm season, high tide flooded ocean to marsh, where low tide dredged fresh water seaward. Overhead, a raucous flock of gannet lift in helixes settle neatly back into arrowed formations after. Leaving the wildlife reserve, we pull off at a clearing, knowing for sighting the famous wild ponies. Clusters of scrub pine and plume grass punctuate swampland, ordinary assemblies of ducks wading through. Only a few minutes of waiting here before we will roll up the windows and drive off. How much do I daily for sake of beauty, its uncertain romance? No wild ponies will appear, no, not in the distance, not at all near. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nanya. Our next reader is Katie Naughton. Katie is the author of the chapbook Study from Above Ground Press. Her poetry has been published or is forthcoming in Fence, Bennington Review, Colorado Review, and elsewhere. She's the publicist and an assistant editor at Essay Press, editor and project manager at the However and How To Digital Archive Project. Hi. Launching in 2023, yay! And founder of Etc., a web journal of reading recommendations from poets. She's a doctoral candidate, candidate in the poetics program at SUNY Buffalo, a 2022-23 Fulbright student research fellow at Simon Fraser University in Canada. Please welcome Katie.
Hi everyone, thanks Common Maintenance for having us, Woogie for organizing, and all the Snail Trail for your work. Thanks for being here, thanks for still being here. I'm going to read a poem that was in Snail Trail that's sort of from the collection that I'm just tying off the ends of at the moment and sort of accidentally opened into, in some ways, the next set of poems that is a manuscript that's also coming close to its conclusion. But in which I'm thinking a lot about debt, and especially I'm thinking a lot right now about debt as sort of like a temporal structure where like something happened in the past and there's consequences of it in the present and future, which being here and thinking about eco-poetics, I'm thinking about now like the relationship to climate stuff in a way that maybe I should work into what I'm thinking about. Okay, so first poem is from The Hearing of Moths. The city doesn't come off us, not in waves like heat diffusing in the irregular air around us. Me, I know money secondhand, dressed lunchtimes a shining wall, always heard, caught smooth in the throat. The sounds themselves partake of light through deep water, sun the deeper water, the nearer the glass world built of air. In melting ice, the lemonade in the weft of thick cotton, summer money season. The daylight will, the weather of the water, the air turns hot, poor, careful dust blooms. And what is mine? Some things I came by take some space, full and blank, people drawn from circumstance by sun. This is the moment of crisis. This is the crisis. Threshold. A word is a theory of how things separate. In threshold, wheat trampled to grain and chaff, and where this work happens in a building or adjacent to it. It's hard desire to be only one thing, to sink into time and know you belong. So erect words and rituals, the proper scent of soap, the place for the best cured meats, cheeses, bread, the lists of money and restaurants, the pleasure song of consumption, would like to know its best, would like the walls to be made of mouths, but buildings are theories of how things separate. Debt ritual, oysters. Buy the oysters anyway. Each night you spend in the city and not home in an apartment alone costs upwards of $50. And for what it's worth, oysters are mostly labor. A man at a counter, crushed ice, this skill not out of place in a Whitman poem. What you want in an oyster is immediacy, brine of a small ocean, and the time to occupy the texture and material of this one moment of your life. The brightness in the dark, red leather banquettes, gin and lemon, silk, suede, and weather, the refractions in the water. It isn't right exactly to want what money has. Debt ritual, grain. With debt owed to Roland Barthes, The Grain of the Voice. I never wanted money anyway. I wanted texture, which money seems to have, its own texture, not the texture everything else has. Like you can pay for thoughtfulness that smooths what you want to be smooth and make particular what you want to pay for. To make money life-like, but like life that's money-like, singled out and beautiful, which makes art a problem, confused with money. Me too, it seems, having sought a textural pleasure written into wanting, patterns of light and shadow on the faces of people from some other time or place, put to film or imagination or memory, coming out of a dark room onto the street in the middle of a work day in an expensive city and believing a way to feel this, the grain in money, as a grain in money, my voice, my hand, the lemon, the leather, the light, I bought, I wrote, to place myself, to make a name. Debt ritual, Nantucket. There's 3 little ones left. There was something I didn't know about money until college, until Nantucket pants in pastel chino with whale appliques, worn seriously, walking past the dining hall to go out Friday night. But that isn't money, that's pants, that's signification, okay, of Nantucket, where I still have never been. But I guess that's also a romanticized rusticity, as in weathered boards and mismatched wooden furniture. I read the English upper classes only, use bar soap and cracked and ancient cakes. Like that, there's nothing more expensive than that, what perches at the absolute fathomless, ceaseless continuation of the ocean, unadulterated except by refinement to the bare possibility of habitation. Even the linens are old and linen, or so I imagine, the type of money that's evident, so that money is an aesthetic, a quiet language of material, which of course is not money, but signification. Money is something else. Debt ritual, drift. Owing a debt to Roland Barthes, The Pleasure of the Text, and Lisa Robertson's Time in the Codex, also kind of to how loud Neil is when he types. It's my husband. An idea passes over the city, the lake wanting to be with us, the cloud shade of desire, the void blush accumulating on time and its architecture, like other ideas I memorize or which make themselves in me, and in which I choose of necessity to live. An idea makes good neighbors, a good storm, a good way out for someone. I am way in with someone, hearing their teeth and breathing, hearing the orthographic noises of their thinking. I am way in with the city. The way it isn't going, I am not going with it. Something layered on the surface, something stupid and intractable about me. A text, a building, someone else, some other time was here. Of this same hasty ritual and its drift, what gives and what is given back. Okay, last one. Debt ritual, Muskrat Lodge. This is from a great journal called Annulet, which if you don't know it yet, you should check it out. It's beautiful. Okay. This is a small poem for the Muskrat Lodge made of reed and the fox tracks frozen into the slush ice. For the way being outside these months shows the temporary nature of structures. Of course, the interior is only a spatial metaphor for temporal engagement, everyone was everywhere all along, making with what was close at hand. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Katie. Our last reader of the night is Nadine Antoinette Maestas. Nadine teaches Cornish College of the Arts and holds an MFA from the University of Michigan's Helen Zell Writers Program. You can find her poems published in Ofrenda magazine, Snail Trail, Page Boy magazine, Lyric and The Germ, Poor Mojo's Almanac, Really Serious Literature, Disappearing Chapbooks, and the bilingual anthology Make It True meets Medusa Rio. Her first solo book was published by Really Serious Lit in April 2021. Please welcome Nadine.
I like these dueling microphones. I feel like I'm invited to a porn right now. Oh my god. Yeah. All right. It's a good thing I'm poems, right? Okay. Obviously, I'm going to take the short one. Thank you for inviting me and organizing this. Thank you for publishing my work. I'm not reading any poems from that. And I feel like I don't have a copy of that bio, and I need to get it from you. It's like right to the point. It's really perfect. Thank you. I was like, man, I gotta run all my bios from you now. I'll take you out for coffee. Okay. This series is called I Misread the Email and Thought You Said I Should Read for 37 minutes. So buckle up. No, I've never clocked my average time as 5 minutes and 37 seconds. So it just looks bigger than it is. Like this microphone. Okay. That's what happens when you put me last. All right. I'm like, okay. Still, I'm that short. Yeah. Okay. All right. I've only read these poems twice before, so I think they're new to everyone except for you, Eric. And I did do a private reading of these poems. I felt like the private dancer in Tina Turner's song. It was awesome. Okay. A beginning. Improbability, unattached, unaware, pursuing confusion. Was reading a lot of Jane Austen at the time. Then I switched to Hemingway. It was like it was a really weird season. In fact, it was the romance of accomplishment. Heavy, eager, weary, and over-imaginary. About all the rumors and about that first time and about the real estate of the heart and of the birds that fly, directionless, with the changing climate. The rain, like forbidding and overbearing, and then also humbling and perfectly principled. That's what it's like living in Seattle, in case you don't live here. Perfectly curious and impertinent and gentle and urging. In spite of the absolute of love and bells induced into sentences. That's poetry math. The consequences, burning up the whole open heart like penance at intervals, in hopes of discussing erasure and pursuing affliction like necessity apologies. I believe I have been wrong, like her face, induced into a sentence like taxes and ammo. I diss on the sentence a lot in case you've never met me. It's like a whole lecture that I will give to you over a pint. A poverty of the heart asks nothing, as if sleeping and dreaming in intervals. Ringing in rhetoric like the new year of language and effect. She returned, an accidental asshole. Doubts, detecting falsehood, secrets you know, mistakes we mean. She should have a little pleasure of violent oppression, open and unaware, the whole heart. Fucking Jane Austen. Security is sunk. And then she returned, so doubting. And can't you just imagine me walking through a field, just like Jane Austen, thinking about what to write next? Intrusion as a form, and astonishment. I might call this series If Jane Austen Was Butch. In hopes of disgusting pleasure and pursuing affection. As soon as civility would allow, private balls and dismissed conversations like bells. Oh, there you are, Hemingway. I decided to read Hemingway after I heard that he punched Wallace Stevens in the face and he fell in a puddle. And I was like, I guess I'll give him another shot. Not sure that it was a good idea. If anyone ruined the art of the sentence, I mean. We could get through it. What is meant is generosity on horseback. It's my Old Town Road poem. Unreserved witnessing, an illustration of opinions and everything else. The disappointment of evening is you agreeing too early and too privately. The inexcusable and the sentimental, and then also the unwilling of things like her face. About the mistake, women used to communicate a lot in facial expressions, apparently. Some people think that art has been lost. I think it's alive and well. About the mistakes, just like the thing I said, right? Arriving late and doubting and secrets, like a self-command more than ordinary and dismissed. And the sentient, the forbidding and sensible, sandwich-like and overbearing. Oh, I love sandwiches. This is probably another Hemingway one, right? Some thoughts of nothing, perfectly valueless and unhappy confidence as an object of hopelessness, a danger, an indigence, eating arrangements in orange and monstrous. Thank you.
No, let's give it one more time for our reader. Thank you for coming. Yay. Tell everyone you love their work. Talk to them. We're here till 10. I know there are things happening. Go off if you need to. But maybe we have more wine. I don't know. Do we? Yes. Yay! Yeah! Yay! Yay!
Oh, tonight, please don't challenge me. Let me be by myself and free. I'm in love. I'm in love with you. I'll submit all of me to you. Tonight, please don't challenge me. Let me be by myself and free. Even if you will go away, let tonight be my special day.